Hi, I hope your week is starting out well. I wanted to check in about our new modules. So, Module 6, the Romanesque style of architecture and art, goes hand in glove with Module 7. So, you will notice that I opened both of them at once so you can look ahead. Because you should really think of everything that you're learning here as you move through the module pages as building up toward what you will learn here about the French style of art and architecture. In both cases, these modules are heavily focused on architecture, also on sculpture, especially sculpture integrated into architecture, and also on these social and religious experiences known as pilgrimage. So you're going to be learning about the times, you're going to be learning about how people experienced religious travel, which is what pilgrimage is, and you're very much going to be learning in depth about architectural innovation. It's rich, it's fun, it's really interesting, and it is heavy on the terminology. So you have an Romanesque architecture questions and open discussion, a place that's not about points, but about just posting anything that is confusing you, no matter how basic it seems, so that we can make sure you are really building a solid foundation. Because when you then move on to Module 7, you'll see how those architectural developments became something called the French style, or what we today call Gothic architecture. I comment on that in this page. And all of that leads up to your midterm project, which is to create a travel guide to the major French cathedrals that we study. So the travel guide itself is not due until April 4th after spring break, but you should not be thinking of it as something far off. You should be thinking of it as an extension of what you're doing here. Of everything you're learning when you do this discussion inside the medieval mind, which is a fascinating film that you see and that you comment on in order to learn a kind of the reality of medieval life for ordinary people versus for the aristocrats. It's full of fascinating events. And then also this quiz. You should think of this as being the material you're mastering so that you can do that midterm project, which is worth 75 points. So that's why Module 6 begins with the page titled The Age of Cathedrals Part 1, because The Age of Cathedrals Part 2 continues in Module 7, and there's lots of music in this module to have fun with and keep you going. And as you move through the module pages, you will see right in our learning objectives that you're studying pilgrimage churches, and one in particular is going to be our major focus. It's sort of the classic example of this kind of architecture, the Cathedral of St. James de Compostela in Spain. So when you read in the textbook about pilgrimage churches, you'll see the importance of St. James in Santiago de Compostela. One of the things you'll notice is that you get a floor plan and you get an elevation. You don't actually get photographs of the building, except for an interior photograph, which is a little bit hard to see. You should know that's because these buildings, this building is 1,000 years old. They were added onto in later centuries. And so the look of the exterior that we see now is actually different from what you would have seen if you were a pilgrim in 1100. Follow the module pages closely because I specify exactly what additional works of architecture you need to know. You need to know about Cluny, in the Abbey Church of Cluny. You need to know about the Cistercians. And then the textbook takes you to a section on regional variations, and we don't look at a lot of that closely. So that is something you can kind of skim through with interest. But when it comes to the main churches like Cluny and St. James, you want to read very, very carefully because they are providing you with a kind of detailed anatomy of the architecture that you will need to know how to work with so that you can do your project in the next module. So I've been very careful in the module pages to direct you to let you know, instruct you, direct you where exactly to focus your attention. Because a lot of the things you're learning require a kind of very slow, careful reading. So I want you to know that you're not having to read everything in that degree. You're reading what I'm picking out for you, which usually has a section and a title to it. So your discussion for this week will be due on Friday, and it will be based on this very interesting film, Inside the Medieval Mind. Take notes as you watch the film so that you can bring solid commentary and questions into the discussion, knowing that the conversation you have with your peers in the discussion is going to help feed into the next module as well, and your project, your travel guide to medieval Gothic cathedrals. So a word on deadlines, right? You have your discussion that's worth 10 points as usual due on Friday. You see it twice because I have 2 sections of this class. You have your quiz due on Monday, and it looks like you don't have anything. Not true. I'm just highlighting that you need to be thinking ahead towards the Sunday when you come back from spring break. Because next week you will be rolling up your sleeves to learn all of the intricate details of French style art and architecture, the basis of your project. You're going to want to read every one of these pages exquisitely carefully, taking notes, knowing that this is what you're going to be thinking about and writing about when you, having mastered it, create what is supposed to be an illustrated travel guide for modern tourists traveling to France. So you should read this prompt now, having it in your mind as you are going through this week's module and next week's module. Do not delay on this because working with architecture takes time. It's exciting, it's very rewarding, but it really does take time. It's not something you can do the night before. And you will then have another module right before spring break hits with a discussion. So you can't really be putting it off thinking that you're going to get to it. So picture in your mind you're mastering Romanesque architecture and pilgrimage this week so that you can then see how Gothic or royal style comes out of that. And then you'll get another module with new material, and then you'll have your spring break to wrap up your project, okay? And then there's a lot going on. Holy and Easter and April Fool's Day and, wow, St. Patrick's Day. So I want you to be focused, and I want you to let me know if you have any questions at all, okay?